Welcome back to the Freemouse MC YouTube channel, and we today have a quite controversial topic, and that is, should you visit dangerous countries on your motorcycle trip? First of all, I think it's very important that we define what we perceive here as a dangerous country for this video's sake. We're going to go full cliche out of the Western privileged perspective, or what often is painted as a dangerous country here in the media. I'm talking about countries on the African continent, in Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, because many of these places often get associated with war, crime, famine, and all these types of things. And it, of course, for many people puts into question, should I be doing a motorcycle trip to these places? As you see, quite impressive trips online, but this is kind of a discussion that is not really being had. Without there really being a discussion on this, there are kind of two sides that you will experience as a motorcycle rider. On the one hand, you have basically your friends and family going, what, you're going to this country? Are you crazy? You potentially could get kidnapped, or something bad could happen. And you have all this bad stuff that you see in the news from news outlets, and you have the pages of the embassy that really often in their security advice against going to these countries, in specific when it comes to motorcycle and bicycle traveling. Yeah, and that can often seem quite scary. And on the other hand, you have influencers like myself who really often say, oh, it's completely fine, these places are completely misrepresented, everyone can do this, and it's so fulfilling and enriching, and you can truly find yourself. I could now make myself a quite easy a video and just go with one of these two narratives, but in my opinion, both of these perspectives are bullshit, and the truth lays somewhere in the middle, and it's a more nuanced topic. So where am I coming from when talking about this topic? On this YouTube channel, I made a motorcycle trip to Morocco, which is seen as a mostly safe country, but definitely in reality has some dangerous aspects to it, and to the Balkans, which is predominantly safe with some small, not so nice quirks. And outside of YouTube, I visited every continent on the planet, predominantly Southern Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, to go surfing. So let's explore. Let's start with the ugly part of this video and talk about the actual dangers that you could be facing from visiting these countries. I feel like there are two areas that are people mainly concerned about, that is being afraid of a government or being potentially a victim of violent crime, and this is also what you see really often as narratives in the media. So let's explore how likely those chances actually are, and how the chance of this happening looks, and how it is when you're then actually there. So let's first dive into the government side. People from Western countries are mostly relatively safe when visiting other countries, also countries with authoritarian governments, due to the power of our passport. There's huge passport inequality, and Western people are kind of at the good side of that. So very easy access to visas, not a lot of security controls then, and it goes all relatively smoothly. This already brings me to the first point, where what influencers kind of say that everyone can do this kind of becomes bullshit, because if you don't have a powerful passport, you will be busy with visas all over the planet, and potentially doing a motorcycle trip through multiple countries is actually impossible for you, because you have to wait years for visas and spend a lot of money on it, and it still maybe is not possible. On the other hand, many governments are really interested in having good global relations with countries from the global north, so they make sure that their tourists basically stay safe, and also they greatly benefit from the tourism from a financial side of things. This is also kind of where you often see the phenomenon on motorcycle trips and bicycle trips when you see them on YouTube, that sometimes in some countries people get full-blown police escorts because they don't want this stuff to basically blow back on them. Of course, an experience of a full-blown police escort makes you feel uncomfortable, and maybe there's distrust towards government officials, and this is not completely without reason. I said that you're mostly very safe. Mostly. While security during motorcycle touring is incredibly important, it's also important to look out for your security online. And that's because this is my first sponsorship on YouTube ever by Aura. Definitely, thanks a lot. Over and over you hear in the news of big data leaks where addresses and, most importantly, social security numbers can be stolen. And this can lead to identity theft, which is a really serious issue. And this is where Aura comes in to stop this from happening. Aura monitors for you multiple data broker sites where your information is being sold and takes it down for you. And also has identity theft insurance going up to $1 million US. Also, you get personally notified within minutes if your credit file is compromised, and also very good for motorcycle touring. Aura also doubles as a VPN service. Also, if you need help, you can reach out 24/7 to US fraud specialists, and all of this is in one package compared to paying for multiple different providers of the same service. Also, you can reach out for help 24/7 to US fraud specialists. And also you get all this in one subscription compared to buying this in multiple different packages from different providers. Definitely use my link in the description or visit Aura under this address to get 2 weeks free and also find out if your personal information could be compromised. And by using my link in the description, you also get to support the channel. There's the relatively small but real chance of potentially becoming a victim of hostage diplomacy. This is the stuff that really often the embassies warn you about, and the chance of this happening is very, very small, but it's definitely real. I cannot talk about any countries in specific because if you want to visit these countries, it's really often like illegal to criticize them, so I'm kind of keeping this mostly country name free, but there's one country that I did the research on where it had 1.5 million tourists and took around 70 to 100 political hostages. It's always very tough to define what counts as a political hostage because you're basically, if this happens to you, get like trumped up charges thrown at you. And motorcycle trips can have some inherent risks here through you basically doing a lot of overlanding and potentially getting too close to a military structure, or through all the social media bullshit, taking too many photos and catching the wrong stuff on a photo. But still, it has to be said that the chance of this happening is very, very low, but it still does happen. And there are right now like people who did motorcycle trips from my home country, political prisoners in other countries. So it's not like it doesn't happen. And there are a few things that can heighten your risk. For example, if you hold a dual citizenship. If you hold a dual citizenship, please do your own research, as this can get a lot more complex and it would like blow the proportion of this video. And it's different from every country that you're basically visiting. Also, a lot of people that I've met that want to visit these countries often are insanely uninformed when it comes to what is illegal in these countries. And you definitely should pay attention to that, because then you just get arrested, you know. And this also goes for what you post on social media beforehand. So I met a lot of people who want to visit some countries in the Middle East who are very loudly active on social media about the conflict in the Middle East and also about the LGBTQ community, and this can fire back on you. Like, don't do this. But in general, with the chance being relatively low, I think it's kind of like skydiving. Most likely you'll be fine, but if you're not, you're fucked, kind of. Let's talk about the other thing that people are scared of: becoming a victim of a violent crime. And you see a lot of this stuff in the news, and the crime statistics of some of these countries really don't look good. But it definitely has to be said that all humans on this planet are completely equal, and you don't need to be worried about the human beings that you're going to encounter itself because of the country they're from or something like that. This is also something that you find out when doing these kinds of trips, that all humans are like relatively nice, and you like very quickly find out like how similar you actually are, even if the culture is like completely different. And this is kind of where all the adventure bike influences are right. This is definitely true. But with everyone being equal, everyone is kind of also equal when it comes to the socioeconomic pressures that they suffer from. And you can kind of try to have some empathy here for a moment, but some of the socioeconomic struggles that people face are completely insane, because a Western standard of living is basically possible in almost every country on this planet. It's more the question to how much of the population has access to that, and how much basically lives under that, and how much of the population sometimes live actually in complete misery. So the question is not much like poverty here, it's more inequality. And there are countries with like that are mid-income countries that have insane levels of inequality. However, you should not approach people that are from a poorer socioeconomic background with the approach of them potentially taking stuff from you, because in most cases they're going to be very, very nice to you. But please put yourself into you doing a motorcycle trip here for a second. You're driving a 20 grand plus adventure bike through a country in like the process of like finding adventure, finding yourself, and you're doing this trip, and then you come across people who have like an annual average income of like $2,475 and you're like, they see you. I think you cannot judge them for thinking that maybe your motorcycle adventure trip is a perverted joke. And it definitely looks like that to them. And they're not going to straight up say this to you, but can you blame them for feeling like this a bit? So with the aspect of there being a link between poor social mobility and very little chances in life and being backed into a corner and potential crime, and you dangling stuff that they can mostly not afford in the span of 10 years of saving every fucking penny they have, sounds like not a good mix. I don't know if this is a good situation that you should seek out. I earlier already mentioned the point of inequality. When you travel through these countries, the inequality between like the capitals and the big cities and the countryside and smaller towns is often very, very big. In the big cities, you're going to be very safe. It's going to be similar to like many Western countries. It's completely fine. You have some places where like could get tricky with like terrorism and like demonstrations and so on, but mostly you'll be fine. But your motorcycle trip itself has some bad implications. It's basically like trying to do everything you shouldn't be doing because you want to travel through the countryside and want to like find out how the country is in its raw, wild experience, and also want to potentially go off-roading. And the infrastructures can really suffer. Like you're going to use all your suspension already on the normal roads, and you cannot rely on services really often. One good example is emergency services. If you have a crash on your bike, for example. I had this in Morocco myself, that I met someone who was in this situation. I didn't had access to my bank account for 4 days because my bank thought that I was a scammer due to my geolocation, and then they blocked my account for 4 days, and I had to spend 4 days without money in Morocco due to holidays in Germany. And I was guest at a farmer who let me stay with him, which is really, really nice of him. Sometimes people are like incredibly nice, like I already said. And he was in a car accident the day before, and he had nausea. He had like problems with holding his balance due to like a head injury, and he wasn't sure if his arm was broken. And he tried to call the ambulance when he had the accident. He tried to call the ambulance later. He tried to call the police, and no one ever showed up, and he didn't get space in an emergency room either. So this is something that you maybe are faced with when you are in these situations in the countryside. Another aspect is that you're completely alone in the countryside and you don't have great access to help if something goes wrong, also from a mechanical standpoint. And this is always something that's romanticized with motorcycle trips. You're just the man and you're making it work, but you can also just die being the man and making it work, you know? And if you seek out situations that are dangerous, you know, fuck around and find out, kind of. Also, many of the local people advise you against going too much through the countryside because you could potentially get robbed. And if, like, you need to kind of check out how it is in the country you're visiting, but listen to what the local people tell you. This is a really good and solid advice. And you're going to see very intense poverty, most likely in the countryside, as there is just a bunch of inequality between the cities and countryside, most definitely. And also, with you being very alone, you're very exposed. You're also exposed to law enforcement, because I talked about the socioeconomic pressures before. There are countries where the police doesn't make enough to afford living, and they're going to do stuff to get by, including criminal stuff. And then with like people not handling power that well as well, you're potentially facing financial extortion and corruption. And this happens in a lot of places. I recently did my trip through the Balkans, which is basically safe except for this point, kind of. And many people see it as like, oh, quirky and adventurous, and oh yeah, everyone can bribe the cops, so it's equal. This is bullshit. This is not quirky. This is not fun, and this is not adventurous. Because, and also like the advice you're getting online is in many cases shit as well. Because people are like, oh yeah, when someone asks you for a bribe, don't do it and stuff. Like, you're alone there with a cop who's willing to break the law, and he's assuming to get away with it. And because most likely he is, in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of other dudes who are also like from the police. And you're like, oh yeah, paying a bribe is known to be illegal. You should not do that. What do you expect to happen? Like, look out for your own safety in situations like this. And even if people tell you to not do that, don't do it. I had this happen to myself. I'm not going to tell you what I did and where it happened, but the situation is incredibly scary. You lose all trust in government personnel. You feel unsafe after, and it's just messed up. Corruption is kind of like all kinds of crime and tax evasion and so on. When there is a lot of shadows where it can happen, it will happen. And this goes for everywhere in the world. And when the structure of a country allows for more places to get away with, yeah, guess what happens? So now, after listing all the negative things that can happen to you, that potentially can harm you and all this kind of stuff, it also has to be said that a lot of these things are blown out of proportion through basically everything negative being listed, and you're not really getting like a lot of positive things at the same time. And the truth is more that you're most likely going to be fine either way. Like, But many people then overcorrect when they do these trips and find out, oh, it's actually like somewhat doable, and then think, oh yeah, it's super misrepresented. No, it's not. Still shit can go wrong. Not because it's not like you assumed how it is in the beginning, it means it's safe. Definitely not. But with you most likely being fine, let's assume for a moment everything is fine and you do your trip. How is it going to be? Of course, you're going to spend a lot less money, you're going to have a good time, see like landscape and all this kind of stuff. But the rough things that we just talked about, you're going to still encounter them. And even if they don't threaten your safety, it doesn't really leave you per se. And with earlier saying that people could see a motorcycle trip as a perverted joke, some of these things can kind of spoil that experience, you know? Short little anecdote to show you what I mean, and trigger warning here. I was in southern Africa going surfing. The flights were cheap during COVID. I knew people there. It was very convenient. And it was really, really nice. It felt like California. It was amazing. It's really great. But every once in a while, the mask would slip. And it would slip hard. Because one of the things that kind of stuck with me was driving my car, being very close to everything being familiar, Starbucks, basically. And coming across starving people. People who are not just hungry, no. And it was not that you could instantly pull over and help, which is the normal thing to do. No, it would happen again and again and again. It kind of was like passing a homeless person here in the Western world. And we know that these things are happening, and we see pictures of this. The pictures that you see in the newspapers are the good pictures, because they cannot just go like, oh, here, life leak, you know? And also the pictures always show people in like very rural communities that make it seem like they're like unconnected tribes or something, that people don't have clothes on. And with the like rural environment, it implies that there's just no food. There is food. There is food, it's just an incredibly unequal society. You can have completely normal life without noticing that this exists there. And then you have this shit still. And also, because the people cannot buy food, this is, by the way, a rich country, it's mid-income and people drive Porsches. So they cannot afford food, so they cannot afford medicine either. So what do you think is going to happen when they have a cut on one of their limbs and it gets infected? Many of the starving people you see there do not have all their limbs. And you see that like this overlaps also with homelessness. And when you walk around there, you see that some of these people still have homes, but they cannot afford food. You see kids with stunted growth. You see that the food that the people get when they are eating is mainly based in corn and potatoes, which creates a very weird mixed look between starvation and very poor nutrition. Yeah, this is what you're seeing. And everyone is ignoring it. No one acknowledges it, that happens. If you talk to the people who are like well off there, other like white people, you can talk about how hard they have it now since everything got restructured. And you think, have you driven 20 minutes into that direction, dude? Like, what the fuck? And this sticks with you. And if you're there on vacation, this really doesn't make you go, you know what I need now? Good caipirinha and a good fucking steak, you know? It doesn't have that effect. And it sticks with you most definitely. So if you go to these countries, even if you're safe, this is what you encounter. I encountered similar stuff in Morocco. Not so bad, but like children who are begging, children who are selling drugs, children who had like wrinkles in their face like a 50-year-old man. And you don't see it on YouTube, not just because it gets demonetized, but also you cannot show this stuff. Like, if I make a travel video and all of a sudden it's like, here, look, you know, it's fucked. You cannot do that. If you're there on your motorcycle trip, you maybe will see things that are so horrific that they are uncomprehendable and unexplainable to anyone who has not encountered them himself in person. And often many other people that visit these places ignore this kind of stuff and really often then basically pay enough money to not see any of it. And in a way, that's the recommendable way to stay safe, I guess, and to not be confronted with these issues. It's fucked up, but it's kind of where it goes. Money really does the talking here. No matter if you're a local person living there or a tourist, if you have money, those places are fine. If you don't have money, it's going to be the most intense level of misery you will ever see. And then the other like Western tourists are sometimes like incredibly dumb and annoying. Like I had Dutch people ask me in Chefchaouen if I can lend them a lighter because they wanted to cover a kilo of weed in plastic to get it across border control because it was cheaper than in Amsterdam. I mean, what the fuck, like how dumb can you be? Or like other people wanting the authentic experiences and then basically spending so much money so people basically confirm their biases that they had before, and then for them to seem cultured, I guess, when they come back and tell people their story. And then with people sometimes hunting these authentic experiences, it sometimes gets really weird, because basically the whole thing starts to bite its own tail from people being like too PC to criticize these countries for actually being dangerous in some ways, which they are. And on the other hand, they want this shit, which turns around being racist again, kind of. It's just weird. In my opinion, if you want to do a motorcycle adventure trip to these countries, have a goal in mind. Either you want to do a world trip. I mean, you can find some flaws, whatever, with everything, but the world is just unjust and we just have to take it how it is. If you like want to do a world trip or want to see a certain specific landscape, I think there's no issue. Just go there, try to figure out a safe way to do it, and drive there and experience it and have a good time. But really often I meet people who want to do these trips to these countries, and I ask them, oh, what do you want to see? There are many nice things to see. And they don't know. They cannot answer the question. And this is kind of where motorcycle adventure travel then starts to blur the line with poverty tourism, because why do you want to go there? What is adventure to you? Is it adventure if women's rights are just completely fucked in a country? Is like the implication of potential stonings happening somewhere? Is this what makes something adventurous at the end of the day? Or like people suffering from severe poverty and you riding a motorcycle right next to it? And I feel like social media is playing a huge role in this, because of course the videos that are filmed from motorcycle trips in these countries go a lot better. You have lower production cost, and also they do a lot better because people want to confirm their biases. That's why people watch these videos. The majority of people cannot name why they want to see these countries. And if I do a video here in Europe of motorcycle adventure trips, I'm going to have huge cost and no one's going to watch it if I do a trip in Sweden, except if I name it getting bum-fucked by a moose while camping, you know? And of course then if you do edgy titles like that in like countries with severe inequality, you're basically benefiting from that in a way. And very often that is played on with thumbnails, red arrows towards children with danger implied, or like full-blown AI constructed policemen in the background, implying basically potentially getting arrested. All of this is happening on big motorcycle adventure channels. I'm not going to call out anyone in specific because we're all here, like, this is our work, you know, so I'm not going to piss anyone off here. And often this kind of dynamic climaxes in the weirdest shit. I said I am not going to call out anyone in specific and not talk about any countries in specific. I'm going to make one exception to that. And that is, I think no one really was able to get away from it the last year on Instagram and TikTok and so on. And that is the trend of traveling with your bicycle or motorcycle to Afghanistan. Yeah. And I'm sorry, everyone who's going there, there's no one who's able to name anything related to why they're going. And I think it's fine if you do this as a like private person and it's a form of like journalistic experience of the country, because we don't know much about it in the last political changes of it. But people who then film their bicycle or motorcycle adventures and are like, oh yeah, I'm doing it completely based in the middle, and at the same time, because of the country, they cannot openly talk about many things that are severely wrong there. And then it just kind of becomes promotion for this. When I traveled through the Balkans, every dude who I met on a bicycle and a majority of people I met on a motorbike were on their way to Afghanistan. And a lot of them were incredibly uninformed and just like, I wanted to tell everyone just like, don't do this, you know? And also it's just like insulting to the people who live there in a way. I know it's helping the local economy, but why are you going there? There are refugees coming from these places who are like, life is fucked, life is bad. We saw a few years people falling from landing gear when they were trying to leave the country. And who in their right mind makes this thing, yo, I should go there, adventure time, tourism, yeah, fuck. People are going to think I'm the coolest dude because I've been in Afghanistan. And honestly, the kind of people who make the videos about Afghanistan in this extreme case, I would put them with like momfluencers who put their children in their videos. It's kind of a big no. Try to not fall into this trap. Try to not, because you think, oh my god, it's so cool, I saw it on social media, to do that, because a lot of people do. With Afghanistan, it's basically the prime example right now. And so how should you do it, and what is the approach to doing these trips? Definitely spend enough money on it in the sense of staying safe. You're kind of engaging in the whole paying to not see poverty dynamic, but like it's kind of the safest way to do it. It sounds a bit fucked up after the whole video I just made to basically have this be the end advice of it. Enjoy your time, and yeah, do your research. You don't really know what you're getting yourself into. This is one thing that I can definitely say, because you're not going to find out how it's going to be in a country from seeing the stuff of the embassy, and you're not going to find it out from watching influencers. And also, we don't know much about these countries in many cases, which results in, if you go there, you will see enormous local differences, and maybe a country that everyone said on the internet is super bad was actually really chill, and then the next place that was supposed to be completely alright was the most terrible 2 weeks of your life. It's kind of all over the place, and yeah. And the whole concept of like adventure travel to these places has some weird indications to it. But at the end of the day, I try to lay out the information as best as possible, and you kind of need to make your own decisions on that. Definitely thanks to Aura again for sponsoring this video, and thanks to the Patreons for making this kind of content possible. And I hope I was able to help some people with basically this question in their mind for the next adventure trip.